Anderson, come over here. I need a word with you. The words jolted me out of deep meditation. I looked up to see Mr. Kasigi glaring down at me. Why haven't you come to meet me yet? I was floored. I did, the day I registered. Don't play dumb with me, mister. I'm hearing talks of DJs and pizza ovens on wheels. How are you going to pay for all that? I don't have money. He was getting red in the face. Nobody expects you to pay for it. The school has money set aside for the dance. But if you don't present your budget, I can't release one penny. I don't have a budget, I explained honestly. I just have people who help me do things. Like what? Fix a cuckoo clock? He launched into a long speech about how he had volunteered to be on the program committee for some principals conference, so he didn't have time to nursemaid me through Finance 101, whatever that was. But it's all taken care of, I tried to tell him. The food, the music, the decorations, it all just worked out. I stopped myself before telling him about Raishan. I had a feeling Mr. Kasigi was not a TNT fan. And who's writing the checks? He demanded. Checks? Rain had a checkbook, but I never saw her touch it. Sometimes we use money to get along, she used to tell me, but that doesn't mean we have to become its slave. To Rain, financial matters were a distasteful but necessary private function, like going to the bathroom. Mr. Kasigi said I would have to write checks. Not only that, but he would have to co-sign them or they wouldn't count. After school, he drove me to the bank. I'd never been in one before. But the instant I stepped inside, I knew this was a place that represented everything Rain and I were rejecting by living at Garland. Money was all that was important here. People were depositing it, withdrawing it, borrowing it, and paying it back. They were coming in broad daylight. I honestly felt like running away. But how could I? For one thing, there was a man in uniform guarding the door. I practically jumped out of my skin when I realized he had a great big gun strapped to his hip. Mr. Kasigi noticed my reaction. Calm down, Anderson. He's a security man, not a bank robber. Every time I thought I was fitting into my temporary life, something would remind me just how much of an outsider I still was. I wanted less than nothing of what this place had to offer. But to people outside Garland, money was so desirable that the bank had to hire armed guards to keep criminals from stealing it. When I finally got back home, I was going to drop to my knees and kiss the ground. Mr. Kasigi and I met with an assistant manager, and when it was all over, I was holding a book of checks marked Claveridge Middle School, Student Activity Fund. You'll need these to pay for music and food, he explained, signing the first 12 checks on the spot. And I'm sure there will be other expenses that come up. They always do. I tried to tell him that I didn't know the DJ or the pizza company, that other students had made the arrangements. But he interrupted me with this long lecture about how this money belonged to everybody, not just me, and how I had to be responsible. And I would have been, if I had the slightest idea what he was talking about. All I wanted was for him to leave so I could get out of this awful place. I wouldn't even let him drive me to the Donnellys. I needed to walk there in the fresh air just to get the smell of banking out of my nostrils. A few blocks down the street, a sight met my eyes that stopped me in my tracks. There, in the display window of a small jewelry shop, gleamed a silver bangle with multicolor stones. It was exactly the same as Sophie's birthday gift from her father, the one he'd taken for engraving and never brought back. I stepped into the store for a closer look. It was beautiful, but also kind of sad, because it reminded me of how upset Sophie had been lately. The idea came immediately. If I bought this bracelet, had it engraved, and sent it to Sophie, she'd never know that it hadn't come from her father, and it would make her happy. I didn't have any money, but I had something even better. Checks, which automatically counted as exactly as much money as you wrote in that little box. It probably wasn't what Mr. Kasigi had in mind, but I remembered his exact words. Be responsible. Rain always said that nothing was more responsible than doing what was in your power to make another human being happy. I'll take it, I told the woman behind the counter. It's $175. She was wary. Do you accept checks?